Hello everybody, welcome to Technique Tuesday. Today I'm going to show you an offset motion card. It's where you move on purpose. Normally you have to be very careful, you don't move your stamps. This time I'm going to move it on purpose, so it gives the idea of motion. This is the one colour version. I will also do a two colour version, and credit where it's due. I got this idea from a fellow demonstrator, Christine Josty. So this was her design, but I think it was so lovely, it just had to be shared. So let's get straight on with it. So I'm going to take a piece of Bermuda Bay. It's 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. So I'm just going to fold it in half as usual. And the other one, because we're going to be making two versions of basically the same card, so the base is the same. And then there's a layer of Pacific Point, which is the slightly smaller 5 1/4 by 4, so that's the same for both cards. Then the layer, as you will see, is slightly smaller, but while we're doing the offsetting and the motion part of it, we are going to be using a regular quarter of a piece of cardstock, 5.5 by 4 1/4. So we need two of those. So what I'm going to be using today is the Waves of Inspiration, Waves of Inspiration stamp set, and the Waves of Inspiration matching die, which is called Waves die. So it has the dies that cuts the waves, it cuts the pelican, it cuts the birds. There's also some labels. There's even a little bit of 3D, I don't know if you can see that, which puts texture on the cloud, but I think the clouds, my personal preference, they were fluffy enough. So let's get ahead and get going. I did go ahead and die cut the pieces out, but we'll get straight on with the stamping. So this is the stamp. It's quite a monster. This is the wave, and it goes on the biggest clear block that Stampin' Up! Do. So I'm going to be using Bermuda Bay ink, matches the cardstock, and also Pacific Point. Those of you who saw my circle card, I don't know why I struggle with Pacific Point, but there you go. Anyway, so we're just going to ink up the stamp, and it's quite a detailed stamp, so it needs a little bit of pounding. That's one of the great things about the Stampin' Up! Ink pads, is that they open, so you've got all the available ink spaces, no lid flapping in the way or any of that good stuff. So we are just going to stamp that down on the cardstock and give it a really good press. And then what we're going to do is pick it up and immediately move it over just a smidge. So you're going to get a second generation. That's what's called stamping off. Sometimes you need just a lighter colour. It's a bit of a workout, this. And there you have it. So you've got the original darker blue, you've got the lighter blue, and that is the offset motion. It just gives the water more depth. So we'll put that off to one side for now, and then we'll go ahead and ink the whole stamp up again with the Bermuda Bay in what we'll call first generation ink. Line it up on the cardstock and push it on. So that's how it looks when it's just one layer. So we'll close the Bermuda Bay, and we'll take the Pacific Point. And because it's a lighter colour, you can just go ahead and stamp. If we're doing it the other way around, you would need to wash your stamp in between, because the darker ink would show up on the lighter ink pad. But Pacific Point is a darker ink altogether, so you can just go straight ahead. You don't need to wash it in between. And then on this card, where we moved it over and stamped it with the same colour, this time we're going to just move it slightly over and stamp it with the darker colour. So where it's offset, the Bermuda Bay will still shine through, but the darker colour gives it a lot more depth of oceanness. So we'll close that ink up for now. So then we'll bring in the paper trimmer, and remember we had 5.5 by 4 1/4, and then we had 5 1/4 by 4. So we're going to cut this at 5 by 3 3/4. So we'll cut off where there's any conflict of interest. You can just line it up with the channel of the paper cutter and go up, cut it across at the bottom. So now we've got it tucked neatly in the corner. So what we need to do is make this be 5. So I'm lining it up at 5 on the paper trimmer. And then we want to keep this part, of course, so we'll move this over to the left, and then we'll line it up at 3 3/4 and cut that. So that's as much of the water as we'll get, and then it fits nicely on the layer. And then we'll do a little bit of decorating. So I'm going to do exactly the same process with the one that was just 2 generations, the darker Bermuda Bay and then the lighter Bermuda Bay. Let's see what we can do here. So we'll trim that down. We'll line this up at 3. No, we'll line this up at 5 because it's the landscape version. Line that up at 5, and this is the one that will line up at 3 3/4. So there you have it. That's the same layer. So pop the paper trimmer away for now. We'll go ahead and stick the layers onto the Pacific Point. Then in turn we'll pop those onto the Bermuda Bay, the main base card. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take Happy Birthday out of the stamp set. Pop it on one of the acrylic blocks, and then we'll take the Pacific Point and stamp Happy Birthday on each of the cards. Close that up, and then we'll take a couple of sets of the clouds. I did go ahead and put dimensionals already on the back of them, so we just have to release the backing paper. Oop. I think I just released the whole thing. Favorite trick of mine of late. So there we go. Pop that one over there. Don't tell me I've pulled the whole stickiness off. Oh my gosh, I don't know my own strength. There we go. That's better. Sorry about that. Carefully remove the little pieces. One of the downsides of Pacific Point, I find, is that it colours you. But never mind, that's what good old soap and water's for, isn't it? So I'll stick that one up there. This one down at the bottom, and then I did go ahead and cut out some of the birds, which we'll use the mono liquid adhesive. Couple little dots on each of them. Doesn't need to be a lot. 2 little blobs to stick 2 little birds down. There we go, quick and easy. And that's 2 cards. This is monochromatic, where it's the main body and then stamped again, first generation, second generation. This one is 2 colors. It's the full strength of the Bermuda Bay and the full strength of the Pacific Point. 2 little clouds stuck on, little birds. I think it looks very cheery. Thanks so much for watching.